Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen Podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
Talk about being on the X.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast with your host, Todd Helms. And I've got Robert Brewer from Combat Waterfowl with me today.
What's going on? How y'all doing?
Good, man. Good. All right, Robert, thanks for taking the time and jumping on with us, man. Your brand is an interesting brand. It caught my eye probably a year ago, maybe. I'm thinking I started seeing it pop around on social media, and I'm like, what is this Combat Waterfowl? Give us a rundown, man.
All right. So Combat Waterfowl, first off, appreciate you having me on. Combat Waterfowl started in 2019, June 1st to be exact. We kind of came together, me and a couple of best friends, and, we wanted to start. Actually, let me back up. One of them wanted to start an apparel brand. I was painting decoys actually, and I had like a little decoy repainting company at the time. And, he was like, man, you should definitely do an apparel brand. And I was like, man, like, nah, I think I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to do an apparel brand. Nah, man, we need to do this. I'm like, all right, man. So, you do it and, come up with your idea. Like, we'll go with it. So decided to go for it. And we're trying to figure out a name, right? Cause that's like the first thing you got to figure out. You got to figure out, okay, what are we going to call it? And we went through and we didn't want to do anything like location oriented, because that's cutting off your market from a business aspect. It didn't really make a lot of sense. So we decided, okay, we don't want to do that. And I put him in charge of the name. He called me one day and he was like, Combat Waterfowl. And I was like, okay, like, tell me why. So, Cody was driving around his truck and he had his Combat Infantryman's badge, which is we're 11 Bravos in the Army, and which is infantry, and infantry get a badge if they're involved in a conflict in combat. It's called the Combat Infantryman's badge. Well, he had his up on the headliner of his truck. He was just driving around and it just kind of hit him, Combat Waterfowl. It's simple, direct. It represents who we are, where we came from, how we got to where we are. So originally when the business was started, the goal was to kind of showcase different species of waterfowl than you would ordinarily see on apparel, in their natural habitats. And then, that was the 41 series, right? We're going to do all 41 species. And then, we were going to, have like a guide series that showcase the different ways that people hunt, whether it's body booting on, the Eastern Shore, or dry field hunting, ducks in the Midwest, or whatever it is, layout boats, whatever. And we're going to showcase the different styles of hunting all over the country and the world. And, so we got into this and we were going on, and an idea popped into our head to, I don't know about you, but I fancy a pair of Crocs. When you slip your feet out of
I won't tell you what I'm wearing right now.
Literally, I'm also wearing Crocs.
Yeah.
So the relationship between the outdoors and Crocs. They're like, oh, we'll just do a Croc shirt. So we did, and man, it went nuts. Like, people were all about it. People went crazy for it. And then, I don't know about you, but I also maybe fancy an adult beverage every once in a while, a nice cold snack. And I was sitting at a bar and I saw a beer label from the Budweiser label, and I just picked it up and I started reading it, Budweiser label has all kinds of words and all this stuff on it. And I was like, man, this would be hilarious if I made every single one of these words something to do about a merganser. So we did, and we dropped that shirt again. It went nuts. And, meanwhile, like, we're trying to push these like super beautiful pieces of art, this artwork that's just like awesome with these species of birds that you don't ordinarily see. And, like, trying to stick with our vision of what we wanted to do. And man, people just wanted the funny stuff. Yeah. And we found our market, we found our niche. And so when we started, we had this Coot shirt, that was Coots Unlimited was our idea. And unbeknownst to me or anybody else, apparently there's some little lodge in Wisconsin or something that's got class 25 trademark rights, which is apparel, clothing, apparel rights on the term Coots Unlimited.
Oh,
So I got a cease and desist letter in the mail. I had to nix that one. And we were trying to figure out, like, we need to do something else with Coots, you know, like Coots are just, they're funny. So Cody was like, man, like, let's do another Coot shirt. I was like, all right, man. Well, if we're going to do this, like, we just need to go crazy with it. We'll put a Coot on top of a bunch of Busch Light cans. And he was like, yeah, dude, that's legit. Let's give him a gold chain and some gold leg bands. I was like, all right, man, like, let's go. Put an American flag in the background and call it a day. And Cooticus was born. And from that point on, that was November of 2020. From that point on, man, it's been full speed. The brand has developed and kind of solidified that niche of personifying waterfowl into doing human things and taking a more lighthearted approach on it, which is who we are as people. I think, you can go through and Todd, you and I have talked about this offline a little bit, but, you can go through and you can look at the waterfowl community as it sits right now. And you have a huge divide. Okay. You have people, the old school folks, we'll call them old school folks. Those folks are pretty apprehensive towards new hunters coming into the sport. And they don't like the way that they wear their hat, or they don't like the way, their truck is squatted, or whatever it is, man. They complain about all these things that the new kids are doing, or these young kids are doing. And then you have these young kids who, some of them, do I think that are probably doing it for social media clout or likes or whatever? Yeah, probably. But there's some of them that are just trying to learn, right?
Right.
And so there's this like huge ebb and flow. And our goal, and my company's goal, is to set all that aside and try to have fun with it, man. Waterfowl hunting, the outdoors should be about providing. It should be about brotherhood, camaraderie, fun, bringing all those things together and trying to take things away from being so daggone serious all the time.
Yeah. No, you and I did have a conversation about that, and it's you're 100% correct, and I have to admit, I've been guilty of, throwing the judgment card out a little too early on once in a while. But at the same time, I agree with you 100%, because I think that if we're not opening up and welcoming people into this, it's, what's the point? What's the future of it? It'll die.
I think the most dangerous thing is getting to a place where you shut people out.
Yeah.
Like you said, opening and bringing people in and all that is important. But when you get to a place where you have a chip on your shoulder, somebody, it's funny that this is timed the way it is. I got a call from the state of Rhode Island the other day. And I've hunted there. I had a representative from their Fish and Wildlife Department call me and ask me if I had a few minutes for a phone survey. I said, yeah, absolutely. Anytime a conservation organization is trying to better their state, take the opportunity to do that, So as I'm going through this, the first 3 questions were asking me about, how I got into hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can almost bet that the overwhelming majority of outdoorsmen that are out there right now, and outdoors women that are out there right now, are where they are because someone helped them get there.
Yeah.
So if you have, you're living in a day and age where hunting is, becoming more taboo and is going away. And so these kids' parents might not have been there to do that. It's on us. It's our responsibility as outdoorsmen now to be better, right?
Yep.
If you see some kid doing something dumb, pull them aside and be like, hey, listen, man, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you what to do by any means necessary, but you might be more successful if you took this approach. Mm-hmm. Or, I don't know how long you've been waterfowl hunting. Have you been hunting long? And give him the opportunity to say, no, man, I'm new to this. Give him allow that person to open that door, and then be like, hey, listen, man, a lot of times it's not good etiquette to really set up this close to somebody. It's dangerous. I don't want my pellets to hit you. I don't want your pellets to hit me. If we came together and maybe hunted the spot together, I think we both have a more successful hunt. And maybe take that opportunity instead of shining lights and, yelling cuss words at people and trying to be better, because at the end of the day, we have a lot more eyes on us, right? You have the local community, you have the world, you have a whole organization devoted to trying to take what we love doing away from us.
Right.
And the more ammunition we give them, the worse off we are. Yeah.
Your name, your company name, Combat Waterfowl, is applicable in a lot of different ways, whether you call it, whether it's the patch, the combat patch, or, you're looking at it like that, but it's, there's areas in waterfowl around the country that it's combat hunting, it's combat waterfowl. You get to the boat launch and it's like a battle to get your boat in or get to your spot, not to mention we're trying to fight the good fight to maintain what we have or increase it, increase it and make it better, make it broader. Yeah, I would bet you're spot on about the whole help thing. I know that, I was lucky enough to have been brought into the hunting world and do what I do because of it was passed down from my dad and his friends. And I had the old guard, that taught us how to do it. But there were individuals along the way that I didn't have any connection to necessarily that, would offer a piece of advice here, or, you'd bump into them even at like a trade show. I remember meeting Phil Robertson at a Ducks Unlimited show and bought a hat and he signed it. It was literally such a short, brief period. And this was back before Duck Dynasty, way before Duck Dynasty, when it was just Duck Commander.
Right.
And with the old DVDs, and man, he left such an indelible mark on me that's like, I want to be that guy. I want to be like that. I want to hunt like he hunts. And you dive into those things. But the point that I'm getting at with that is he had an attractive persona. Yeah. And if we're not attracting others of like mind, we're dooming the future of our pastime, of what we love. Absolutely. So yeah, the whole combat waterfowl thing, I love it, dude. There's so many ways you could do spins on that. What's been your?
I'll give you another spin on it. I'll give you another spin. So, in the apparel industry, or I really guess in the outdoor industry, it's pretty industry standard. Everybody talks about pro staff, right? I hate that word with a burning passion. I hate the word pro staff. And more or less because I feel like to so many people, becoming pro staff means that, you're somehow better than someone else or
right.
Whatever. So we don't call them that. They're gunners. Right. And, another way to kind of tie in that combat thing, the gunner is the guy who's in at least a mounted infantry scenario. He's the guy who's really commanding that truck. He's the one who's kind of helping run that vehicle. And he's the one that's, got all the important tools and all the important equipment to go out there and conquer the battlefield. Right. And that's kind of the way that gunners, to me, or pro staff or whatever, that's how they should be, right? They're the front lines of your brand. That's somebody's going to bump into you wearing, let's say Todd's wearing a Combat Waterfowl hat and he's standing behind the booth at a trade show, right? You're the first person that someone's going to see representing this brand, whether that's their only impression that they ever get, whether they've heard of Combat Waterfowl and they saw the icon and they were like, oh man, that's Combat Waterfowl, I'm gonna go up and talk to that guy. Being a gunner is about being the face of a company, right? Or the face of a movement. Really, it's not what we have. To me, Todd, is not really a company. It is. It's my full-time job. It's what pays my bills. However, it's so much more than that. Our gunners are family. They link up, they do trips all over the country with each other, and do things like that. And so tying that back into that combat element, those gunners, man, they're the front lines out there doing it day to day. And, I think that that's so important for a business. Obviously it's from a marketing standpoint and for all other purposes, but in the urge to be different, as we do in every single thing we do, tying that into something that means more than just a title on your Facebook profile, if that makes sense.
I love it. The whole idea of pro staff, it's gotten worn out. It used to be you had to earn that, man. And it was like, if you got on with a company and got some free gear or discount, or, you were helping rep that brand, that was a big deal, and now it seems like, unfortunately, some brands just throw it around and like, throw it up on social media, whatever. And it's more, it doesn't have the weight to it that it used to. Right. And I like that you tied it back in again to something from your experience in your past in your life. That makes sense, man. I like that term. I'm a gunner.
It's different, man. And like, they're so hardcore. Like I have the absolute best group of folks, men and women, that are just there, like whatever and it's not just about, like, one of our guys, he's in Arkansas, right? His kid is in baseball. And he was trying to raise a little bit of money for his baseball team. His son's on travel ball. His wife is a teacher. He is in the industrial repair industry for like heavy equipment and stuff like that. Okay. It's not like they're incredibly well off or anything.
Right.
He made a post. He made a post in our gunners page about, actually he was too humble to do it. Another gunner that knew of what was going on made a post about it. And we rallied together and helped him out. Like it's not one person. It's not one thing that makes it happen. All these pieces kind of move together and make this brand something that stands for something else. It's not, it's so much more than a t-shirt or a hat. And I really, I try to project those vibes, I guess, through, our TikToks or our Instagram or whatever. But really, when you talk to one of us, man, like that's what I want to happen. I want somebody, if somebody comes up to any gunner that we have and says, hey man, what is this? What is it? What is this?
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be a talk about a hat. It should be a talk about what we're talking about right now. It's not just it's not a brand, man. It's a lifestyle.
There you go. There you go. I like it. Yeah. And I think, I think your perspective on that is spot on, because for so many people, we may only hunt a handful of times a year, but I would bet you money that the people that are listening to this podcast are thinking about hunting, 365. It's never very far away from my mind, right. Whether and that's not just waterfowl, that's across the board. You think about all different kinds of hunting. The Wyoming draw results just came out yesterday, and that's all anybody could talk about. It's like, that's what'd you get? What'd you draw? Did you draw anything? Where? Oh,
I got a pissed off Army buddy that's up there. Didn't get drawn for moose, and he was upset. Yeah. No, it's always at the forefront of our minds. I feel like, I grew up deer hunting. And then once I started duck, I didn't duck. Nobody in my family duck hunted. So I didn't start.
Remind us where you're located, so people can, like, geographically, they can put a spot on the map in their brain.
So I grew up, I apologize, Ty. I grew up in central North Carolina. And I live on the coast now. And I've lived down here for the last few years, and I don't ever plan on leaving this place. But geographically, as it pertains to waterfowl, we have a lot to offer. Our state has a lot to offer in hunting in general. To waterfowl, predominantly is going to be wood ducks in the majority of the state. Down at the coast, you'll get into some divers, some bufflehead, some bluebill. We have a really large population of redheads that are centrally located in the core sound, kind of midway up the state.
Yep.
And they kind of get there and stay there. We have a decent population of common and surf scoters. And then, our state is inundated with impoundments that'll hold the majority of your puddle ducks, your good puddle ducks, I guess, so to speak, your mallards, your teal, your widgeon, your gadwall. A lot of those you'll find in private impoundments. Pintails are kind of a prized possession in North Carolina. They, if you want to kill a pintail, you're either going to go to an impoundment or you're going to go to the Outer Banks and do one of the coolest hunts that you could possibly do. It's called a curtain blind hunt. It's unique to this area. Basically, it's a sink box, but the reason that they're kind of grandfathered in that area, that you're able to move the curtain up and down depending on the tide. And it's a very unique hunting experience. If you ever get the opportunity to do it, Todd, you 100% should do it.
It sounds incredible. What can you tell me more? Have you done it?
Yeah. So you're in a box, but think like a pit blind. Okay. But it's much smaller. And it's buried in the sand.
Okay.
You're hunting tidal, shallow water. Like to the point where they use pallets. They use pallets and put decoys on top of pallets and set them out in front of the blind. I mean, it's like the birds are in your face. And it's such a cool experience, man. Like I can't even begin to like try to paint the picture.
Sure.
It's basically like a stand-up pit blind in a tidal area. So, you kind of the curtain's going to move up and down depending on, where you're at with the tide, and you got to, jump out of the box and shoot over it, and there's times that, like water will come crashing in that thing. Or I saw a couple years ago, one of them turned over. But man, it's such a unique thing that it's one of those things. If you ever get an opportunity to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah, no, that's one of the coolest things about this podcast is I've gotten to talk to so many people from around the country, and there's different tactics every single place you talk about, 100%. Whether, like you said earlier, there's all these different ways to hunt, waterfowl. That's like, everybody's got a different way of doing it, and it all works in that area, and talking to these people, you might be able to modify the technique and use it in your neck of the woods. You just don't know, but that's cool. I'm going to look more into that because it sounds interesting. And if I do get a chance to get down there, I have a buddy that's just outside of Atlanta, and he's busted my chops all the time about coming down and fishing and hunting and doing all these things. And it's just like, dude, that's a long way from Wyoming.
It's definitely a haul.
Yeah, it was more doable a year ago, that's for sure. It's a little tougher now, but anyway. Well, that is super cool. So you've got all kinds of different birds. I hear you on the pintail thing. It's the same here. We have them. You shoot them in cornfields, or you shoot them on bodies of water, but they're not common by any stretch. They're around, but they're not. I wouldn't say that you kill them all the time. You see them quite often, but getting them killed and seeing them is two different things.
I like the circle a few times. I mean, all in all, man, North Carolina is a decent state to waterfowl hunt. It's not a great state. It's not to me, what North Carolina has to offer is heritage and different ways to hunt, and just a different experience. Down here, they're watermen, right? So like, especially at the coast, that's kind of where that comes from. These boys are out here, they might be pulling up oysters, they might be doing, running commercial fishing, and, then duck hunting in that season. And, it's something to do on the water all year. Right. But I be honest, Todd, anymore, I spend the majority of my time hunting outside of the state of North Carolina. I travel pretty much exclusively now. And it's for a couple of reasons, man. Mainly is the business. at this point. A few years ago, it was chasing down the 41 series, the 41 species. I knocked that out in, I think it was 2018. I finished that. And then now it's content oriented, and it's like also me trying to do something different,
Right,
and
right.
hunt a new state or hunt a new area, or go visit a gunner and hunt with them and visit with them and their family in their area. And so anymore, it seems like that's mostly what I do is kind of hunting out of state.
Cool. What are some of the places you were last year?
Where did I go last year? I went to Arkansas for sure. I went to North Dakota. I'm trying to remember where else I went, man. I don't know where else I went last year. I know where I'm supposed to go this year.
Yeah. Where?
I went to Southeast Texas last year too.
Oh, cool.
I'll be going to this year. I'll be in New York, in Texas for early goose and teal. I'll be in Canada, North Dakota in October, then Arkansas in November, Oklahoma in January. I don't think I'm going anywhere in December. I think I'm going to kick it at the house.
There you go.
Yeah, man. It's a lot of traveling, but a lot of fun. And, I got this dog now, and, I'm trying to experience all of that with him. So
how long have you had your dog?
He'll be 3 years old. He's a little over 3. He turned 3 in March.
Okay.
But man, he's
right in his prime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he's still coming into it. This weekend, we're supposed to go chase a master pass in Ohio.
There you go.
So we're so close to a master title. It's ridiculous. Trying to get that done. And, it's been a different experience, man. I was always that guy that I've got 2 older labs, that I train myself, and, I train myself, I mean, they'll go get the duck and they'll come back.
Yeah.
That's about the extent of it. And frankly, man, I never really realized, or I guess I never really paid any attention or given any thought that, I needed anything else besides that. Then I hunted with a dog that was just nuts. I mean, the intuition and the connection that, that owner had with that dog, and the sheer raw ability of that dog to be able to, trust that, when you're given that cast, that there's a bird over there, and I don't care what obstacles are in the way, I'm going through it, over it, under it, I'm getting that duck and I'm going to bring it back. And so to me, not having to carry a pocket full of rocks or waste old shells, sounded pretty cool. So I went that route, and with this dog, and I've always kind of kicked myself for not putting. Ember is my red lab, man. She's an American lab, but she come from a lot of field trial background and stuff like that. And her drive, I mean, she's 10 years old and she's still got it, man.
Yeah.
And I've always kicked myself for not putting her through that and allowing her to go through and get titled and all that stuff. So I kind of made a promise to myself I'd never do that with another dog. If that dog had it, then I was going to let him get it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. We're going for it.
That's super cool, man. You're so right about taking your dog to the highest level possible, and whether it's, master hunter, or you're running different field trials, or, whatever hunt test series. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast in the past, and the guys that's their thing, they're into it. And I should say guys, there's a lot of gals that are doing it too. And
I would say it's probably 60-40 men, women.
Really?
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's just being able to take a dog to that level and have the connection, like you said, that connection with that dog. It brings having a dog to a whole new level. It's not just a pet anymore. It's not just, it's my duck dog. No, this is there's a massive connection there when you train dogs to that level. It's super cool.
They're a high performance hunting tool.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And I was that guy that always like downplayed or talked down to, like, you know, early in my waterfowl career, I was like, man, I'm never going to go just waste my weekend sitting at a hunt test. Like, this is stupid. Like, there's so many other things that I could do with my time. And, you know, like, you know, my dog could do that or whatever. And there's a lot of people like that out there, but to those people, there's a big difference in you throwing a bumper in your backyard and the dog going and getting it and picking it up, and then going to a place that the dog's never been before around 200 other dogs and 200 other people with all this pressure and, you know, all this excitement and dogs barking and running around and doing all this stuff, and your dog being able to perform at the peak level through all of that. And those dogs aren't the same. I mean, they might be able to do the same work in training, maybe, but those dogs are not the same dogs.
No.
And I've gotten a newfound appreciation in the last few years of that process and of those organizations, man. I mean, the AKC, the UKC, the Super Retriever Series, they're trying to preserve a pastime the same way that we are.
Yep.
You know, and there's a lot of respect to be had for somebody who's just trying to keep something going, you know, and
it gives people an outlet, you know, like we talked about hunting for you and I as a passion. It's a year-round thing. I've never not thinking about it, you know, reading about it, consuming content related to it. It's just one more outlet for that. And it's a very productive outlet because if you're doing it, you know, right, you're involved with a group, you're involved with a community, you're working with your dog to take it to that highest possible level. You know, it is so difficult to do that out here. I have the closest group that I know of, and if somebody's listening to this and I'm wrong, please message me, email me, get a hold of me on social media and tell me. But it's, to my knowledge, the closest hunt club or retriever club to me is like 3 hours away. You know, I'm looking like Casper, Wyoming, or I don't think we have anything in Billings. I know Chad Carmen is up in Montana, and he's got some stuff going on, but it can be difficult in certain areas of the country because you're going to have to travel. You're going to have to make that commitment if it's something you want to do, and you're going to have to put $5 gasoline in your car and go do it. You know,
there's other options too, though, Todd. And you know, providing other options for maybe some listeners who are in some of these remote areas or whatever. But, you know, there's a lot of good pro trainers out there that'll sell started dogs or sell finished dogs. And it'll kind of take, you know, if you're one of those people that like have to raise a puppy, then obviously that's not going to work for you. But
right.
You know, there are people out there that'll, you know, tons of pro, at least in this area, they sell those dogs all the time. You know, for people in that situation, maybe they run a guide service, or maybe they, you know, they just don't have the time or whatever to wait for the dog to be trained, or they don't have the time to do it themselves or whatever. And quite frankly, you're going to come out cheaper buying a finished dog from a pro trainer than you will buying a puppy and putting it through training and paying for the entry fees to get it there. I can 1000% promise you that. You're paying $500 to $1,000 a month, depending on what trainer you select. You know, in this area, the industry standards plus minus 758, somewhere in there. You're paying that a month, man. That's almost a mortgage payment. I would say it was a mortgage payment 10 years ago. Maybe it was.
Right.
Now that's like one trip to Walmart. But you know, you're paying that every single month, and September will be 3 years that Kai's been in training.
Okay.
You know, and you know, I have a great relationship with my trainer. And we have something worked out. He's got kids that are in softball and all this other stuff. So he's with another good friend of mine right now. This hopefully should be his last month. But I make it a point to go to his hunt test and handle him in his hunt test and run his hunt test and stuff like that. And be a part of training him when he's here. And there's options for every situation. So I definitely would rather see somebody reach out to a pro trainer than pick up water dog and think that's all there is to dog to that level.
I hear you. I laugh because that book has helped a lot of people put ducks in the freezer over the years. That's what I started with. There was nothing.
Me too.
There wasn't anything else.
I got 2 dogs that I trained off of that book, and there's nothing wrong at all with that information. But it's been updated. We know more. We know more about dogs than we did back then. We have better tools now. I'm working with training Hondo, my puppy, right now, and he's not a puppy anymore, but we're about a year in, and I kind of pressed pause for a while on training where we stuck with at the same step because of winter, of the weather was impossible to deal with. There was time involved, and now we're moving forward, to the point. And he's a Southern Oak Kennels dog, and I went that route, and I'm very, very happy with that. And so I'm using the Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy 52 plus to train him, and some of it is very elementary. It's very much for that first time dog owner that we breezed through pretty quickly, and others we're starting to drill down into casting and hand signals and things like that now, where we're going beyond just throwing a bumper, running out and getting it. We're doing a lot of that still because it's fun. He loves going and getting bumpers, but there's more to it where we're drilling down and getting into building that finished gun dog. So where are you at right now? Are you on the T-drill? Or are you on pattern blinds? Where are you at?
We just started. I just started lines, like taking a line to a blind mark.
Okay.
We're building from there with that. I wanted him to be steady as a freaking rock. And so we drilled down, and it's like whistle sits, stops, all that handling stuff. I wanted him to have that solid, and he's still not 100% solid on it, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're working on it. We're going, we're getting there. But it's a process, and it's some days you'll take him out and he'll crush it. And you're like, yeah. And then the next time you take him out, he's an absolute tool, and it's like, what are you doing, dude? We got this. But it's just like people. We all have bad days and our good days,
Man, I might hurt your feelings a little bit with this, but I'm gonna tell you a story. So the first test that I went and ran with Kai, my trainer went with me, and I was like, man, can you come on? Or no, maybe he didn't go with me that one. He went to the second one. I think that's what it was. Anyway, the first one I ran with him, we failed. Like we failed the hell out of that master test. Like it was bad. It was atrocious. And dude, I remember being up there on the line, and dude, like I can't explain to you if you've never done it before, for your listeners, but the adrenaline that you get at the line, like when you're getting ready and everything's going off, and you're watching the dog, you're watching the birds, trying to figure out where they're landing, and the adrenaline that you get is crazy. You would not think in a million years that it would give you that sense of, or that feeling, but it does. And I remember when he went and did what he did, I failed, and I knew right there I failed. He went over the hill and he established the hunt, and then he abandoned the area and went, hunting in another area.
Right.
And I was so mad at that dog. I was so mad. Like, I remember just like when I was whistling him back in, and I was like, God, get in here, like just upset. And when he got back, I walked off the line, thanked the judges, appreciate your time, judges, walked off the line. I threw that lead over his head, and I grabbed that lead up, and we started walking to the truck with a purpose,
Yep.
And I put him in the back of the truck, and, I put him in his kennel in the back of the truck, and he looked at me, and I grabbed the lead off and I took it off, and I said, "Why did you do that?" And a guy pulled me to the side that I knew. And he was like, "Man, your dog didn't fail that test. You failed that test." And I was like, at the time, I did not want to hear that. I was like, "What are you talking about, man?" Like, he's like, "Well, when the dog, as soon as you saw the dog about to leave the area, you should have handled that." He's probably caught the scent from the other blind or the other mark over there.
Right.
And
right.
all he knows to do is go out, get a duck, and come back. Like, that's what, and if he smells a duck, he's going to go find that duck. If you don't want him to go get that one, then you need to blow your whistle and handle him. Like, why didn't you use your handle? You had a handle. And it just hit me. I was like, man, I say all that to say, I feel like more times than not, we fail our dogs. I can tell you Kai has failed one test. I have failed every other one.
Yeah. No, there's almost invariably that's the case. I talk about days that are good days and days that are bad days. And if I'm usually not on my best when we're not having a good day. If you think about it, look at it, maybe my temper's short. Maybe I'm distracted thinking about something else and my heart's not in what we're doing, or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's usually us. You're 100% right. Think about the bad days you've had on a hunt where maybe you ratchet the pressure up on yourself to the point where you're a jerk out there, and you're a jerk to your dog, you're a jerk to your buddies, or whatever it might be. And you look back and go, okay, if you're self-reflective at all, you can look back and point the finger where it needs to be pointed.
Yeah, it's usually not in the moment, though.
Right.
Usually,
No.
Like, way on down the way.
Yes.
But yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I feel like a lot of times we're our own worst enemy. And we get ourselves into situations that, in the moment we don't necessarily accept the responsibility that we should. And I'm speaking to myself about myself when it comes to that. And it could be something as simple as, getting mad. Like, if you scouted an area, especially here, like, things are tidal. The food is moving. So you're hunting divers and sea ducks. You could go out the day before and you can watch sea ducks trade back and forth on their lines and where they need to be. And, to me personally, if I'm going to go hunt divers and sea ducks, I don't need to be set up before light.
Right.
And I learned that hunting the Great Lakes. You can set up before light all you want. And most people, like, you go to a boat ramp down here in North Carolina at 3:00 in the morning, you're going to have 15 people in the boat ramp,
Right.
If you're hunting poodle ducks, maybe you got to get to a spot where you're going to go, then okay, got it. Divers and sea ducks, man, you need to go out there and watch where they're flying back and forth and position yourself in between them. So I remember getting mad one day about, I'd gone out, just like every other, newer waterfowl hunter. And I was out there at the crack of dawn. I was already, set up, eating Little Debbie's and drinking Mountain Dew and Monster, well before the sun was up. And, get out there and, I'm hearing, an hour, 30 minutes, hour after sunlight, everybody's shooting and I'm not. And I was like, man, I saw birds here. And it's just like one of those things that you learn. And I wouldn't have learned that had I not experienced it.
Right.
And, I remember just being so mad and overwhelmed and, upset that I'm coming back. I've driven at this point, I still lived in the central part of the state. So I drove 2.5 hours, from home to come down here to hunt, done my scouting. I did my part and it just wasn't good enough.
Right.
And at the end of the day, like, you always learn something. from those mistakes or, those setups. If you did a setup in a particular way and the birds reacted a certain type of way, like you're going to remember that stuff, I know it's for sure stuck with me.
Yeah, it's not just like you said, it goes back to that regional thing about what we do.
Yeah.
It's different everywhere. I've always been the guy that's out there, like you said, way before shooting light, set up, ready to go, sleep in your boat kind of thing, whatever. And a lot of times especially out west, it's, we're hunting scenarios where we're hunting late season. You're looking at December, January, and sometimes into February, and it's cold out here. I mean, it'll be 15, 20 degrees below zero, and you're hunting these. The only reason there's any birds around is because there's fast water for them to, or springs to get into. But the point that I'm driving at is, I don't know how many times I'd go out on those super cold days and I'd be out there early and nothing happens. Nothing flies. Maybe right at daylight, a few birds trade around, but it's like, man, I know there's thousands of birds in this area and I'm not seeing them. What is the deal? And then so you get frustrated, you get cold, and you go home. Okay. So I had an old guy that I started hunting with, and he really changed the game for me, because I remember the first time we went hunting together. I said, what time do you want me to come to your house? He's like, come out about 9 o'clock. I'm like, what? 9 o'clock? Dude, there's no way. All right, your hunt, your spot. We went out. I went there at 9 o'clock. His wife had breakfast ready, biscuits and gravy. We had a good time. Yeah. And then we went out, leisurely set up decoys, and about noon, the birds just exploded. There were birds everywhere, flying around, landing in the decoys. And I'm thinking, And I said, man, I have to admit that I thought you were nuts at 9 o'clock in the morning, to hunt ducks. And he's like, they don't even fly when it's this cold. They don't fly when it's that early very well. And he's like, honestly, I'd rather hunt them during the middle of the day anyway, when the weather's a little bit warm. It's easier on me. It's easier on my dog. The birds fly better. And I've seen it so many times just like that out here. Whether it's geese on a feed someplace or ducks on the river, some of that midday stuff can be phenomenal. But if you go and you scout it and you're like, all right, I'm going to be there right at daylight, that might not be the best option.
Right.
Having to change that mindset has been imperative to finding success.
I've seen that too, in the Midwest and like North Dakota. And, like you'll go, and obviously you're going to hunt in the morning. You're like,
right.
Traditionally, you're going to hunt in the morning. So in the afternoon, like you're scouting for the next day. Right. And then, you're out there in the afternoon, you're seeing all these birds, you go back in the morning, there ain't nothing there. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've definitely seen midday and afternoon feeds, in adverse environments too. I mean, I've 100% noticed it. I was stationed in Alaska for 5 years.
Okay.
And
where were you stationed?
Fort Wainwright.
Okay.
In Fairbanks. Mm-hmm. And up there, waterfowl season comes and goes all in about 2 weeks.
Yep.
September 1st it opens, and by the middle to the end of the month, I mean, it's usually snowing and getting frozen. And there, when that happens up there, they're already migrating down, because in the same thing, like there's nothing that's going to keep water open up there, really. I mean, it doesn't really happen like that where you're at. That's cool that you have springs. So you'll hold birds all season.
Yep. They're hard to find, but we get the little warm water sloughs and warm water ditches and little hot ponds, and you see them, you see them on YouTube and stuff. And we've hunted a couple of them. Most of the hunting that we do here is on the river, the big western rivers that don't freeze. They'll freeze, but it's got to get really, really cold. And if it's like that, most of the time our birds move to some place that's a little easier anyway. We see a lot of movement back and forth in the area, in our geographic area. Our birds will move around over the course of a season. The same big wad of birds will move, 200 miles, back and forth. If it gets really cold up here, starts to freeze up, they'll move down into some of those geothermal areas, or if the weather warms up a little bit, we'll leak some back up into Montana, and they shift back and forth. And you can have some phenomenally epic days if you just watch the weather that time of year and go, okay, I'm going to get on that migration path and we're going to run traffic all day long. When that weather hits, there'll be birds up and flying. And I don't know, we've had some incredible hunts just doing that where we didn't even have a feed. We just got on the migration got on the migration route and on a crappy day and just set up a ton of decoys and ran traffic all day.
And that's interesting. So, I've never heard of hunting traffic until I left. And until I left this area, when I got out there, you don't really run traffic on birds here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you kind of do, I guess, with divers, they wad up, and they get in a raft over here, and then another raft over here forms, but they're flying this high off the water and they're going from this raft to this raft. So in my mind, I don't think of it like traffic, but you watch some other hunters out there and some guide services out there in the Midwest and, out towards where you're at, man, they don't have any food in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, they'll just set up, 100 dozen decoys, lay in the middle of them and just absolutely flat wear them out.
Yep.
And I think it's pretty awesome. And at the end of the day, man, I mean, that's really what it's about. Your goal as a waterfowl hunter, it should be to fool the bird.
Right.
And, it comes up often. People talk crap about people water swatting birds. At the end of the day, not saying that like that's my preferred method or anything. It's not. It's actually harder to kill a water swatted bird. But if the bird will land, you won.
Exactly.
The hunter won. Winning is not getting a duck within 30 yards of your spread and it keep flying away. That's not winning. That something about your spread, something about you, something you did wasn't right.
Right.
But if you have birds that are consistently landing in your spread and your decoys, your hide's good, your setup is good, you're maybe in an area where there is food available. Whatever it is, you did it right. To me, that's winning. When you can set birds down in your decoys, you win.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And we obviously with the YouTube channel and the different videos and stuff, you don't kill them all that way, but man, no. you sure try to. Yeah. You sure try to. It's like, nope, let them work. And yeah, and camera's terrible because it makes even birds in the decoys look like they're 100 yards away, and it's man. Like, yeah, you go back and look at footage that you had an epic day and you didn't shoot a bird past 30 yards,
Yeah.
And you look at it and it looks like they're all, 50, 60 yards out there and you're sky busting them. And it's like, oh my gosh, no, that's not what we do.
I'm going to tell you something else in the Midwest that I found when I hunted there, that I found myself doing is just, after you limit out or after you get done hunting, just watching.
Yes.
I never did that ever until I hunted in the Midwest and, we were freelancing and, everybody shot a limit and, we just watched the birds for a little bit,
Yep.
And it was something cool to like, hey, like you're not going to shoot, you're not going to pull the trigger. You're just going to sit there and you're just going to watch these birds work. And it's just, I don't know, man. It's,
you'll learn a lot about birds and how, what they're looking for, how they react by just watching birds decoy to a spread, and yeah. There's a couple spots that we have, that tend to hold quite a few birds, but you're really close. If you're hunting them on the river, you're hunting really close within probably a quarter to a half mile of their roost. And so it's like, if you leave that roost alone, obviously it builds and builds and builds and builds, and by the end of the season, you've got a good number of birds around. But if you don't, and you're down there just banging away like crazy days and days on end, pretty soon you don't have any birds left, right? I don't know how many times that I've sat and watched birds after the limit, not necessarily just to sit and watch, but because it was the right strategy to preserve my spot. Yeah. I was just sitting there letting the birds do their thing, and it's like, just sit here and drink coffee for an hour, eat some more donuts, or, let's just sit and have a BS session. We got our birds. We've had a good time. Let's let these other birds fly around, do their thing. And when they quit flying, we'll get out, pick up the decoys, and get out of here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, man. Just trying to preserve for the next time, the next hunt. It's not keep going in there and kicking them out.
Well, it's not just the shooting, it's you're picking up decoys, you're walking around, birds are coming, flying up the river, and they see that spot where, it's just pressure. When you add, the more pressure you add to those birds, the less likely they're going to be to stay in that spot. And it's just minimizing your impact, and your pressure can really up your odds.
You're right.
Big time. You get in, get out, or get in, wait for the chaos to die down, and then get out.
Man, I got to ask you something. What are your thoughts on ditch jumping? Like, I know it's super big in like Arkansas and
right
in the Midwest, like ditch jumping snow geese.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the conservation season? What are your thoughts on, folks doing that? What's your take on it?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, man. I think there's two ways of looking at it. In what I mean by that is are we talking about, jump shooting ducks in duck season,
snow geese,
or just snow geese? Because if I'm looking at it as jump shooting ducks, there's a lot of places that's if you're want to kill ducks, that's the only option you have.
Yeah.
There were spots, there's spots out here, parts of the West, that they'll get ducks, but they're not going to get up and fly around and go feed and then decoy. And it's not feasible. So you jump shoot them. Yeah. And I've done a ton of that over the years. I don't do it much anymore because I don't have to. But when we start talking about it with snow geese in the conservation order, I don't have that number of birds here. If we're talking about it as a management tool, great, all for it.
I'm talking about you're browsing the internet, right? And you see a guy with, a pile of 500, 600 snow geese, and for a fact that dude jumped a roost.
Got it.
Like, what is your take on that from a waterfowler's perspective, from a personal sportsman perspective? What is your take on that type of hunting when you're talking about those kind of numbers during that season?
From a waterfowler's perspective, from a hunter's perspective, I personally wouldn't enjoy it. It'd be like, it might be fun to go do once, just to experience that. But after that, that would not be my preferred way to hunt those birds, because I like to decoy birds, and I think there's more to it more to waterfowling than just killing birds.
Right.
There's a way to do it that there's lots of ways to do it. And if they can all be fun, and they can all be used as effective tools. We're talking about it as a management tool and managing numbers of geese. I think it's an incredibly effective and legitimate way to do it, But for me, I'm like, I gotta do it once, just be like, okay, that was cool, but I want to decoy these things,
Well, like my thing is, so I kind of have a similar perspective that you do. My thing with it though is, they kind of get a bad rep of trespassing, I think.
Okay.
In Arkansas and stuff like that. But, so when we were in Texas, there was a snow goose feed that was in this field, and there was some brush that we could kind of like creep behind. And I never jump shot any snow geese in my life. Never done it. I've always wanted to do it, just like you, just to say I'd done it one time. And man, I'm going to tell you, that was a cool experience. That was a lot of chasing down crippled birds.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. And you know, that's my take on it. So if you, and then two, the other thing that I don't like about it is, which this wasn't a problem where we were at, because it was exclusively there, but in Arkansas, you know, you'll get specs during conservation season.
And they're mixed in. Yep.
Yeah. And people go out there and, you know, they'll shoot 500 snow geese and then wind up with specs, which are obviously, you know, illegal to shoot at that time.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think that when you're talking about, you know, hunters' impact on, you know, waterfowl populations, frankly, I don't think that you could go out to a same field and jump shoot 500 snow geese every single day. And I truthfully don't think that our impact is very substantial when it comes specifically to hunters' harvest numbers.
When you're talking about managed hunting seasons, you're absolutely right. The impact is incredibly low. That's why we manage the way we manage, because we have very little impact. You know, obviously we've learned from, you know, the passenger pigeon, for example, that we can shoot out a species. Yeah. If we do it with no limits, if we do it with no regulation, and we're just completely exploiting a resource, yes, we can have a massive impact on that. Especially in today's society, in today's world, where we have such high quality equipment. You know, our guns are better, our ammunition's better. They're just talking about shooting passenger pigeons, man. They didn't have the stuff that we did. It was just massive amounts of killing that did that, you know. And so, yeah, it's interesting. There's a huge difference between hunting and killing, you know, and I've always said that. I say that with turkeys all the time, because turkeys, especially out west, have a tendency. There's either the guys that like them and they compare them favorably to elk, and there's the guys that aren't really fans of turkeys, think they're stupid, think they're easy to hunt, easy to get, whatever.
I challenge those people to come out here. Come out. I hate turkeys. I hate them. They're the most frustrating. I cannot stand a dang turkey. I can't, man. I mean, honestly, dude, they're insane, man.
It's one of those things though. They get a bad rap out here as being dumb and being easy to kill. But invariably it's somebody that shot them with a rifle. You know, they've shot them with a rifle on some ranch someplace. They're like, oh, that's turkey hunting's easy. And it's like, no, you killed that turkey. You didn't hunt that turkey. Right. All you did was pull up with a varmint rifle and snipe him from 300 yards away. That's not turkey hunting. That's not turkey hunting. You know, it's different.
They're just so frustrating here, man. And there's people, man, I've got some good friends of mine that are incredibly talented turkey hunters. They're very, very good at turkey hunting, and they'll be tagged out, no problem. Me, I don't know what it is, man. I think turkeys hate me. I think they do. I don't think turkeys like me very much, because it's like every time I go turkey hunting, something else happens. They gobble on the roost and then they shut up as soon as they hit the ground, or, you know, and they're so smart. Like from like an animal's perspective, I mean, they have really teeny tiny little eyes, but they can see the slightest bit of movement from forever away. They're super challenging to hunt. And that's why I'm a duck guy, you know, and that's why I got away from deer hunting. Dead honest with you. I hate sitting still. I hate being quiet, you know, and when you're duck hunting, you know, like you can hang out. You sit there and smoke and joke with the boys all day, and you know, it's not a problem. You know, the birds, hey man, birds are coming. Just chill out for a second. Yeah, be still for, you know, a minute or two while the birds are working, and then, you know, bing bang boom, everybody's high-fiving and working dogs and picking up birds, and it's like this excitement thing, and you get to do it over and over and over and over again, you know. Whereas, you know, you go turkey hunting and you gotta sit in, you know, up against this tree or in this blind with all these snakes and ticks and all this other mess, and be dead still while mosquitoes, trying to gouge your eyeballs out. And, you do all this for this bird to walk 50 yards, 60 yards away from shooting range and turn around and leave for no apparent reason. And it's like, now
I know. It's super frustrating. It's funny because we took Guy Eastman on a goose hunt. I think maybe his first goose hunt ever a couple of years ago. And we got out there and he had fun in spite of himself, because he's a big game guy, and he's like, now I see why you guys like doing this. He's like, what's that? He's like, you guys aren't hunting. This is a coffee club with shotguns.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I get guilty. Who's got more coffee? Who's got the donuts? It's
absolutely
that. And that's especially out here after you spend an entire fall chasing elk and mule deer and antelope and doing whatever it is you're going to do. And it's serious. You got one chance a year to get those tags done, and you're looking for a certain type of animal. And it's pretty high pressure. It's nice to go and jump in a duck blind or a goose blind and just have fun.
We operate on a point system, right? For your big game.
It depends. Non-residents is all points based, and residents only get points for sheep, moose, and mountain goats.
Yeah. Let's see, like North Dakota.
No, I'm sorry. I take that back. We don't get points for mountain goats. Mountain goats is random.
Let's see, like in North Dakota, you can, as a resident, you can only kill one moose in your whole life.
Right. We're looking at things like that out here. They've restructured especially the non-resident tag allocation for the big five. The big five being sheep, moose, mountain goat, bison, and grizzly bears, which we have a management plan in place. It's just stalled out, and we're not allowed to hunt them right now.
That's what I was gonna say. I didn't know you could. I didn't know you guys had brown bear in Wyoming.
Yep. Yeah, we're loaded with grizzly bears in certain parts of the state, not the whole thing. Over where we are, we're about an hour from Yellowstone. It's the park border's right there. If you want to go screw around with tourists all day, you can. But there we have tons and tons of grizzly bears, which can make duck hunting interesting, because a lot of times those bears will be inhabiting the same river bottoms at the same time of year you're trying to hunt ducks. And so
when I was in Alaska, I mean, you really didn't have to worry about grizzly bears or brown bears really at all. I mean,
right.
You got to really come between a cub and a mother to really cause an issue. But like black bears were more elusive, that up there, I feel like they had more issues out of black bears than brown bears. But what about wolves? Do y'all have a real bad wolf issue there?
We have more wolves than we definitely need. That's for sure. And it's not just Wyoming, it's Montana and Idaho too. And we all have management practices. We all have seasons, where you can hunt them. And it has helped, but there's definitely places. Wyoming's done a pretty solid job of getting their wolf levels down to socially acceptable levels, and levels that are not impacting ungulate populations as adversely as they did when they first blew up. There's drainages here that the wolves have changed entire ways of life. Where you had outfitters and businesses that made a living off of hunting elk on their migration routes outside of the park. And back in the day, it was like, yep, let's go get an elk. And now in a lot of these areas, you're lucky to find an elk. There's just not, in other areas, the elk are doing great, and they definitely have figured out how to live with those wolves. But if we're being completely honest, they've had a massive impact on those elk populations.
What about massive? So do y'all have like a lot of trappers up there? When I was in Alaska, we had, there's trappers. That's what they did for a living.
Yep. I have a friend who's a USDA government trapper, and that's what he does is predator management. and everything from, I'm not even going to get into it, but we have county trappers, we have county predator boards, we have, I mean, we still shoot coyotes out of airplanes and any way you can, because they have such an impact on people's livelihoods, and so do the wolves, and so do the grizzly bears. But we've got the wolf thing figured out. We just need to be able to control our own destiny with these stinking bears, and we'll be better off.
Hunting down though.
What's that?
You said they shut hunting down on them.
There hasn't been a grizzly season in Wyoming since the 1970s. So
what is the reason for that, do you think? Conservationists or anti-hunters?
No, it was the population was definitely probably below huntable levels at that, and it dipped below that at that time. And then just since then, those bears have really made a comeback to the point where there's really so many of them that they're displacing themselves. It's not healthy for the bears. We end up with all kinds of conflict, because I commercial fished on Kodiak Island for 2 years. So I was around those bears all the time, right? Lived in the bush. I was around them all the time. The bears that we have here are 10 times more aggressive than those Kodiak bears. I never had any trouble with those Kodiak bears. We were around them all the time. Sows, cubs, big boars, didn't matter. Had one bear get a little grumpy with me one time, and that was just his personality. He was kind of a jerk, but a little bit of bear spray and some aggressive posturing. He and I came to an understanding, but our bears here are a pain in the butt. We had a fatality earlier this year. There's usually 5-6 maulings and a fatality or 2 every year. And it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal for the bears. It's a bad deal for people, but it's crazy. What I was saying, that time of year, you could easily bump into one, on the river bottom going down to hunt ducks, so it's like, my guns aren't cased. I don't, I get down to the brush and drop one in and walk the rest of the way into my blind in some of the places, because you just never know what you're going to run into. There's guys in Montana that have actually shot bears while they were pheasant hunting.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What's the legality standpoint? From a waterfowl standpoint, you're not allowed to bring any sort of lead. You're not allowed lead on your person at all.
Right.
Here, and what is the wildlife stance on, a bear gun as a sidearm? Obviously, you're not going to take, when I was in Alaska, I forget what I had. It was a Ruger Alaskan. I think it was chambered in .454 Casull.
Yeah.
And, that's, obviously I'm not going to shoot a duck with that. Does Fish and Game for Wyoming kind of look the other way a little bit?
We're allowed. Yeah, we're allowed. You could carry a handgun if you wanted to. Nobody does. That it's a pretty short window. If there was going to be a bear down there in the river bottom, they have been. We have seen guys find tracks and everything else. I don't personally know of anybody that's had a run in while they were duck hunting. So okay. Nobody carries it. You could. We're a constitutional carry state. You can carry concealed or open anytime, anywhere.
I was more speaking for the most part to carrying lead ammunition while waterfowl hunting.
Got it. Yeah, I don't know anybody that loads up with buckshot to walk down to the duck blind. It's not like that.
That's me during snake season, brother.
They're flying a little high today, boys.
Bro, I'm telling you, if there's one thing I don't do, it's snakes. I can't. I don't. Nope. I don't go. I tend to not go in snaky areas until after a first frost. I just, for whatever reason, I can't do snakes.
You and I are in the same exact boat, man. I will take grizzly bears and wolves and all, doesn't matter. No big deal. You throw rattlesnakes in the mix, I'm out. I'm like, nope. Hey, you want to go hunt chuckers in the rocks in October? Why? when I could just wait till December when everything's frozen, the snakes are asleep.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, thank you.
Got cottonmouths and copperheads down here. Then there's rattlesnakes, not any way to the degree that you guys have them out your way. At least, I don't think. But the cottonmouths are pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Now copperheads are not very aggressive, but they are. Their issue with copperheads is most of the time people step on them, and that's when their camouflage is very good. You know what I mean? Whereas cottonmouth will eat you.
No thanks.
I can't.
No.
Man, I think that came from my grandpa, quite honestly. Like,
oh, really?
Yes, absolutely did. So my grandpa's a farmer. He's been a farmer for longer than I've been alive. But he got out of the army, and he started farming a little bit. He grew up farming, and then he started a welding business. Then he, was running the welding business in a convenience store, and grandma ran a restaurant. And then grandma was like, I'm ready for life to slow down. And so, they're raising kids. So they sold the store, and grandpa started farming again. And, I grew up there,
okay.
He's the person who taught me to hunt, fish, and all this stuff. Well, I was a kid. We were over there. He's got like 30 acres on the far end of his property that's all blueberry bushes.
Okay.
And he's got a couple of ponds over there that he put crappie and bass in. And so I'm sitting over there fishing and all that stuff. And grandpa's over there, he'll find a snake when he's up there pruning blueberry bushes, and he'd throw the snake on me or throw it at me. And these are like little green gardens.
Yeah.
Little black snakes or something. But for whatever reason, man, it terrified me. And the crowning moment was they have a 12-acre pond in their backyard. Just beautiful, gorgeous pond. And I grew up fishing on it. And I remember I was after lunch and I was going to go fishing. I walked out of the front door and I was walking to the pond, and there's a barn on the way to the pond where all the fishing stuff's kept at. So I'm walking there, and I kind of got my head down, not paying attention. There was a magnolia tree in grandma's front yard. Well, there's a snake sitting right there at the bottom of the magnolia tree. Well, I freaked out. Obviously, I ran and got grandpa, there's a snake. He goes out there. And it's a water snake, and they started killing them water snakes because they were eating grandma's duck egg and all that.
Sure.
So kills a snake, and I proceed on. I go in the barn. There's another one right there. So I'm freaked out at this point. I get grandpa back over there. He gets rid of that one. And I come out of the barn and I go around, and there's this big tree between the barn and where the boat is sitting at, little aluminum John boats. There's one posted up on the side of the tree.
Oh, dude.
Get that one. All right. So then I go down and only place I ever really saw them around the house really was under the boats.
Yeah.
They're aluminum John boats, sitting on the edge of the bank, and snakes will crawl up under there and hang out in the sun. And when it was heat of the day, so get down there, lo and behold, there's one under the boat too. And from that day, 4 snakes, just boom, 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 boom. And
No thanks.
I probably wasn't 8 years old when that happened, man. And it's
scarred you for life.
Yeah,
dude. So do you guys ever have any troubles with like your dogs getting into venomous snakes?
Me, no. Does it happen? I'm sure it happens, but
okay.
I don't think it's such a widespread issue. Like I said, the only venomous snakes we really have in huge numbers in this particular area is copperheads. We have some copperheads, probably number one. We have cottonmouths, and we do have some rattlesnakes. But for the most part, man, it's not like around like the water's edge and stuff like that. Like where we'd be sending a dog in and out.
Right.
You don't have a ton of venomous snakes to really hang out there outside.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Cottonmouths like water. Everything else, like copperheads, they like the woods and brush piles and things like that. And then your rattlesnakes are kind of the same way. But it's not a huge concern in this area. Like where I live now, we have gators here.
Oh, okay.
And like where I'm at in South, we have gators. So that would be more of a concern to me.
Yeah.
Than snakes would be, and sharks. We have, I don't know how much you pay or don't pay attention to great white sharks, and like when Shark Week happens, they do that search thing and they show you all the tracking of all the sharks. Well, the Pamlico Sound is a pretty big popular area for duck hunting.
Okay.
And great white sharks rip through that thing all the time. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like to me, there's a lot scarier things to worry about with a dog than a snake here.
Sure.
I'd be more worried about sharks and gators. In the winter you don't have to worry about the gators as much, but certainly the sharks. Yeah,
that's crazy to think about, man. It's different, and obviously I'm sure any it's not like it's happening all the time, otherwise you'd hear about it and guys would be like, I put a dog in Pamlico Sound, gonna get eaten by a shark. I'm sure it's happened. Just like I know a couple guys that lost dogs in Florida, to gators, to the point where they don't hunt their dogs down. They won't hunt them where they know there's gators. So it's kind of interesting, but it's the same here when it comes to wolves. And you're not going to bump into wolves when you're hunting ducks, and geese, obviously. But if you're hunting birds, upland birds, or you're using your dog, you're taking your dog with you on a big game hunt to help with, grizzly bear deterrence, which I do all the time. My labs go with me.
Work?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A dog will run off a grizzly.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. If nothing else, my young lab hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet, but my old dog goes elk hunting with me all the time. And I've had multiple occasions where he's alerted me to the presence of a bear. Or,
that's awesome.
He sits there, you knock a bowl down and start working on it. Of course, most of the time it's in the evening, it's dark, bears, it's pretty rare to have a bear come and push you off of a carcass. I mean, that doesn't usually happen, but they'll hang out and wait, for you to leave. And then as soon as you leave that carcass, they're on it. And then it's theirs. You're not getting it.
You're not going back after.
You're not getting it back. And so, but the dog is handy to have in those situations. It's one more thing to deter a bear if it comes down to that. And it's the biggest thing for me is it just helps having the dog there with you helps you detect those bears before there's a problem. So it's a lot of guys, their duck dogs out here pull double duty.
I would have never in a million years thought about that.
Yeah,
I would have thought that it would have been maybe a detriment that you'd have to worry about the bear trying to get the dog. But
not at all. No, dogs and horses most bears are pretty scared of dogs and horses. You definitely see horses would be a prey animal sometimes too. I mean, there was just a video that came out of this bear chasing this whole herd of horses around, but that's pretty rare. Horses, big, tough, mean animal, and that's a lot for a bear to handle. And a dog's, most dogs don't like bears, so they bark and they're loud, and the bears are just like, get this thing away from me, But the wolves definitely could be a problem. I know a guy that killed a wolf that was trying to kill his lab. They were up hunting elk. He had his lab with him, and wolf smelled the dog and came flying out of the timber, and the dog was like, you know how dogs are. They want to run right over and say hi.
Oh yeah.
And that's the last thing you want your dog to do with a wolf.
Yeah.
And he killed the wolf. It was coming right for his dog.
Do y'all have open season on wolves there?
Yeah, we do. Wyoming is interesting because we have seasons areas. The areas around Yellowstone This kind of like the core areas of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Those wolves are managed very, very tightly. Like we have a quota. Once that season closes or once that quota is met, hunting's over. Wolf hunting's done. Outside of that area is called the predator zone. And in the predator zone, wolves are shoot on sight 24/7, 365.
You can hunt them at night and do whatever you want.
I don't know about hunting them at night per se. I've never gotten into that.
So that's how they kill most of the coyotes here.
Right. And Wyoming has some pretty restrictive laws on light, on using light sources at night. So right. I know like night vision or infrared, you wouldn't be able to hunt with that here.
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, say you're out running around in this country right now, and you're out checking your fences, or you're keeping an eye on your lambs, and wolf comes running out, trotting out, and you're in that predator zone. You just smoke them, because there's places where it's like, okay, we're gonna have wolves here, but we're not gonna have wolves anyplace else. And man, they spread like crazy. Like crazy. There's always new wolves popping up in parts of the state. It's like, dude, that's almost to South Dakota. I mean, there's a wolf over there,
So we have in North Carolina, we have coyotes, and then we have red wolves.
Your red wolves, yeah.
They're very, from my knowledge, well, first off, there's not a whole lot of them.
Right.
The state of North Carolina is very protective, but you cannot shoot a red wolf.
Yeah.
So in counties where red wolves are known to be, you're not allowed to coyote hunt at night.
Okay.
But everywhere else in the state, you can't.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that your red wolves they're on the ESA, and they're trying pretty hard to recover them. But wow, this just went off on a tangent on wolves.
Yeah, we got to talk about predators. Now we're talking about predators. Snakes.
It's all hunting. It's all hunting. Oh, that's pretty good. So what when you go on your trips this fall, when do you leave, and what does your season look like? Are you, like you said last year, you spent December at home?
Yeah. So I'll be in hopefully around the first week of September. I'll be in New York, and then I think I'm going on a gator hunt in right after that, and then going from there to Southeast Texas for a teal, from there to Oklahoma for a friend's wedding, and then back home. And then I'm packing the trailer and getting everything loaded, and then going to Canada the first week in October, coming back, going to North Dakota the last week in October, and then coming back and going to Arkansas in November. And
you're obviously hunting, but how much of that is content production?
Every second is an opportunity for content. Anybody that hunts with me knows that camera doesn't really leave my hand too much.
Right.
So I keep that thing on me. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. If you're not, that's the craziest thing, is just always looking for the picture, always looking for that, snapping pictures. It's so nice a couple of times that I've had a dedicated photographer on a hunt.
Yeah.
Because the pictures that I don't have to think about it, I just doing what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden I get, hundreds of ridiculously good photos.
It's a struggle, man. It truly is to me. That camera has done a lot of good for this sport, and it's done a lot of bad too.
Yep. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
The problem is that, me being a brand, I really can't help. I can't not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the brand doesn't exist if there no content exists and no availability or visibility on your product exists.
Right.
But it's definitely changed. It's changed this industry. It's changed what I do. And in more ways than one, from a positive manner, to loop it back into being positive, man, it has totally changed the way I hunt. It really has. It has changed the way that I set up. So like I set stuff up specifically to make sure that, I'm getting a good angle, whether it's lighting, whether it's, aesthetically, I'm a lot more attentive to like blind manners, right? Like I don't want freaking dip cans and Little Debbie wrappers and Mountain Dew bottles laying all over the floor of the blind anymore. Stick that crap in your bag. I don't want that in my photo. Obviously we'd pick it up when we leave, but
yeah.
It's more of those like subtle details and like things that you pay attention to when you look through a lens versus just looking. And how the final product comes out, production value, film angles, exposure, times of day, what filters are you using, all this stuff, man, it all matters. And trying to get that perfect shot or whatever it is. And anymore, man, I focus a lot of my time on film. I do photos, if an opportunity has presented itself that like I want to get that, but my camera's good enough that I can go frame by frame in Premiere Pro and take out a photo if I want a photo.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's interesting too, because social media has definitely made that switch to video. That's one thing. You go back when social media, Facebook started, kind of started it, and then you moved to, Instagram, and it was picture heavy. You scroll through and it's maybe all pictures and very little video. And now it's the exact opposite. It's mostly video and very few pictures. In fact, I don't know about you, but if all I do is post pics, I don't get near the response as I do with video.
Well, so it's funny you brought up like the transition. So like Facebook, to my, my side of it is it's more of a place where friends and family kind of connect.
Yes.
And, it's an opportunity for communication and, dialogue. Facebook is about dialogue. And then Instagram came along and it was all about pictures, right? That's when it started. That's what it was. It's all pictures, right? And then, a few years, they did some, you could post videos on Instagram.
Right.
But then TikTok comes in. All right. TikTok takes over the freaking world. So now you have TikTok, and then now Instagram's had to jab back and do the Reels thing, which is essentially the same platform, but using Facebook's versus using TikTok's. And it's pretty crazy to me how video driven, and it's all about like how long you can keep somebody's attention on a video.
Right.
From a content generator's or a creator's perspective, like TikTok is going to bump you up in the algorithm when you have, what is the percentage of people that watched your video at least 75% of the time within the first hour. That's how it's so crazy how these algorithms work, and times of day that you post matters. Everything matters. It's ridiculous to me how it all works.
It's a job. That social media stuff is a job in and of itself.
Yeah.
If you look at the guys that are very successful at social media, they dedicate a lot of time to it. It's not just throw up a picture and put a little motivational quote under it and walk off for the day. You're not going to get much that way, and it's interesting because it's difficult to keep that in mind sometimes, that it's just another part of the job. It's just what you do.
Every minute matters when you're talking about that kind of stuff, man. Everything matters. And then too, it's like, engagement, there's a difference between, having a creator who, gets a lot of likes, and there's a difference of having a creator that, is truly connecting with their fans or their audience.
Right.
So like, I'm huge about, connecting with my customer base, so I spend a lot of time responding to comments or, seeing what's going on with other folks and, commenting on their stuff or whatever. And just like being available, being out there, and allowing your customers to see you out there in the community is to me, from a brand perspective is substantially more important than, somebody like a musician, right? A musician's going to put out their songs. They're going to get up on stage. They're going to sing it. go look at one of Morgan Wallen's posts. There's probably 12 million comments on it. He's not reading those.
No,
not all of them, not anywhere
No.
close to all of them.
no.
I'm sure absolutely he, checks in with his fans and stuff like that. But, it's nowhere the same when you're trying to run a brand, or like your social media, for instance. You're running a podcast. Your literal position is all about engaging with your people, right?
Yes,
And so it takes a lot of time, because without your listeners, we're just two dudes sitting here talking.
Yeah. And honestly, that when we talked about doing this podcast last week or 2 weeks ago, it was like, what's this going to look like? It's going to be an interview. It's going to be this. I'm like, honestly, we can do, the whole, tell us about you, tell us about what you are. And we can walk down through some stuff and kind of direct it with some questions, but it's way more fun to sit down and have a conversation.
Oh, I'm right there with you, man.
Back in the old, it's all we're doing different between, if anything, the podcast world, the social media world has connected us all on a level that was impossible 15 years ago.
Right.
Where you didn't know anybody. You saw them on the Outdoor Channel, or you saw them on a video or whatever. That was it. And now you go places and it's like, there's really no strangers anymore. It's like, you've never met this person, but you're familiar with them based on their social media platform.
Right.
It's crazy. I think it's cool.
Wow.
I think, like you said, there's negatives and positives, and it's one of those things that if you use it correctly, it's a positive. It's definitely a positive tool. I had Ryan be on the grid on last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about it, and man, he framed some things that made me think, and I hope made a lot of people think about just what it is, instead of being, social media is this horrible, wicked, evil thing. Not really. It doesn't have to be. It depends on what you do with it.
And he has done a heck of a lot of good, man.
Yes, he has.
Ryan is he's an awesome dude. Really cool dude, setting up a lot of stuff for the veteran community and doing a lot of things for the veteran community. And the outdoor community in general, man. I mean, he's just he is the real deal. Like he is an outdoorsman, 100%. I have a ton of respect for him.
Yeah, he was cool. Do you guys, so that, I guess that gets me back into your company, your brand. You guys are veteran owned, veteran operated. What do you do as far as like veteran hunts? Do you do any stuff like that? Do you operate in that community at all?
So I wouldn't say specifically operate in that community. No. And I think part of the reason, if I'm being honest, is I ran I was the East Coast director for a nonprofit in the veteran hunting industry for a good while. A really awesome organization, awesome nonprofit. But I feel like in the quest to start a profitable business or a for-profit company, as opposed to getting away from the nonprofit stuff, I kind of didn't want to blend those two worlds, for a couple reasons. One, I didn't want the perception that I was using my status or my notoriety within a nonprofit organization to perpetuate a for-profit one. And the other thing too is, man, I'll be honest, I got burned out.
Sure.
I spent a lot of time and a lot of resources for a lot of years, putting those things together and being a insanely big part of that. And I loved every minute of it. And there were moments that, felt to me like, I don't know how to say this, maybe in a way that sounds better, but in more ways than one, taken advantage of.
Right.
And the veteran that we have now, a lot of the cases, or what I started to see, was largely unappreciative and grossly entitled to things.
Interesting.
That's my perspective, being one. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me.
Sure.
Right. I don't want anyone to, pity me. And I think that's a difference. I think that's a different perspective than maybe some people would take, or maybe some people would even agree with. At the end of the day, like my perspective of the United States veteran should be like, we're a strong fighting force. We were built by the government to defend our values, our flag, everything that we stand for. We are not a weak group. We are not a weak populace. We have something to offer the workforce in our communities and in our areas of influence that is powerful. And I want to showcase that in a different way. And we partner with MoVets Outdoors out of Missouri. We partner with the Fallen Outdoors, and we partner with several other organizations to assist them in events that they have and things that are going on. And a lot of our following are vets,
Sure.
and I want to represent the veteran community for myself as someone who had a dream, had a vision, saw it, executed, let's go. And I don't want to, at least from like certain areas of, I guess, what you're asking. So like maybe like the 22 a day thing, and trying to, I think people put a lot of focus on that, and that's a good thing. Veteran suicide is a huge issue, but I think that unless you're in that circle, I don't know if you understand it as much.
Sure.
I think the general public might have a different perception than the reality of that, and maybe some of the causes. And so I think that's a touchy subject in a lot of circles, and I'm cool with that. But there's a lot more that we could be doing. And Ryan's approach to it is an incredible one to have. Ryan vets every single thing that he does.
Right.
He gets to know somebody before they go on a trip with him. And the way that Ryan handles his trips and his selection process and all of that is something to be respected.
Yeah.
And I admire the way that he goes about it and the impact that he has, and the things that he does, the connections within the community. I mean, those trips that he puts on are life-changing for those folks. And there's a lot of great organizations that are out there doing that. And I was very thankful to be a part of it for as long as I was. And I wish that, and Ryan isn't really operating as an organization necessarily, but
right.
I wish that the organizations that are out there, and being right here in North Carolina, we have representations of the Air Force, the Army, the Marine Corps, Coast Guard. We have almost all of your branches right here. And then, the Navy is right there in Norfolk, just across the state line of Virginia. And we have all of these veterans here and active duty service members. And, we have all of these veteran organizations. And, when I got into it years and years ago, there was not a lot of people out there. There was Wounded Warrior Project, and that was about it. And Wounded Warrior Project was going down a bad path, and we were going down a good path. And then people saw what we were doing, and they're like, oh, well, I'll just start a nonprofit, and I'll start a nonprofit. And then we're like, our state became an Oprah of nonprofits. You get a nonprofit, you get a nonprofit. And it's all of these people that are competing with one another, right? And and the majority of them are all acronym based. And so for people that, not to put anybody on the spot or any organization on the spot, but let's say ABC is, we're better than EFG because ABC did this, and this. Well, EFG's got this, and this. And it's like, then you get the pro staff folks that work for these organizations on these pages going back and forth, and you're all doing the same thing. Your goal should be the same, right? Like, and at least the organizations that I worked with and for, they're all volunteers. So it's not like it's not like this organization is taking anything out of my pocket.
Right.
I'm not making anything on this. Like, this is my time that I'm giving to you, and to giving to these service members, and like make it about them. Don't make it about your organization or your name, going into the next level. And it's crazy. It's crazy the way things are right now versus the way they started. And all of these organizations that have popped up in the nasty knockdown drag out stuff that I hope none of those veterans ever see.
Yeah. Right.
And it's gotten to be such a problem. And so to answer your question, it makes it very difficult to partner with organizations in this area, because if you partner with ABC, then EFG is going to be really upset. And it's I don't know. You can't win for losing. You're going to piss somebody off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was just curious. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot or anything that. I just kind of wondered, and it's not like, well, I do all kinds of work with veterans, so that makes me better than you. It's like, well, no, that's not what this is about. But yeah, no, I was just curious. So back to Combat Waterfowl then. What's been your top seller? Like, back to your merchandise. I love the fact that you have taken a tongue-in-cheek approach to this, because you're absolutely right in that, man, we can get so wrapped up in the seriousness. Everybody's so serious. It's so easily butthurt and offended. Yeah. And it's like, hold up, pump the brakes. Hunting's fun. It's supposed to be fun. That's why we do this. If we're taking ourselves too seriously, then it's just a job. Then it's just one more thing, to do. It's like, why are you out there? So I like your approach. I like what you guys have done, but I'm curious as to what you see as being your biggest impacts, your best sellers.
The number one shirt design ever is Cooticus Volume 1. Cooticus Maximus Volume 1, bar none, by far, probably, by several thousand units. Wow. By a high number of thousand units more than any other design.
That's awesome.
And majority of that happened within the first 6 months of that coming out. And
really,
no design has been able to catch it. Total number of volume. We're still, that shirt came out in November of 2020, and we still stock it on the website, and it still sells.
Don't mess with a good thing, right?
Yeah, right. And so Cooticus has come back a couple different times, and all of Cooticus designs really go, they really take off. Woodrow Bilson, he's our wood duck. He's rowdy, man. He does good. This last time he came out, he was riding a lawnmower with an American flag in the back, flying off the back of the lawnmower. Chuck Norris is probably another top one. The first time he came, he was hanging out in a cornfield, laying on his back, eating a corn cob, and there's a combine in the back, cutting the field. And he's like, I don't care, man. I'm just going to lay right here and I'm gonna eat this corn. And then he came back. He just came back recently, a couple months ago, to the flooded timber, and he's going out baiting his hole. He's driving a mud boat's full of corn. He's standing up there. He's come back from a duck hunt, going to bait his hole. Yeah, man. The coot, the mallard, the wood duck, those are probably your top sellers. And then you have things that, I guess, something that if somebody goes and looks at our brand, things that we integrate into the design that you'll never know, like Clyde Featherston. All right. That's our spoonie. He, on the Clyde Volume 1, he's riding an 80s Honda 3-wheeler. And he's just like a regular, just crazy, dumb redneck guy. Right. Well, there's a posted sign that's in that design. It's sitting up on the side in the back. And, I grew up listening to all kinds of music, but You know, there's a song, Mike Jones is a rapper that was pretty popular in like the early 2000s. He put his phone number in a song. It's 281-330-8004. Well, that's the phone number that's on the posted sign.
Really?
Yeah. And then
that's clever.
You take like the Boys in the Hood design. Okay. Those are hooded mergansers. So you're playing off of like Boys in the Hood, hooded mergansers. And, you know, like you see the shotgun shells on the street and stuff like that. But there's subtle hints that like a waterfowl hunter is going to know is, you know, hooded mergansers and wood ducks, they kind of share the swamp together. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a chalk outline of a wood duck on the ground. And you would only know that it's a wood duck if you know what a wood duck.
If you know what a wood duck looks like. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And a lot of people like miss that, right? And then like Foul Capone that just came out in the beginning of the year, the snow goose. You know, like a lot of people call them like gangsters, like snow geese are gangster, man. You know, like they're greasy, they're gangster, you know, whatever. So we turned a snow goose into a gangster.
Into the gangster, yeah.
With old gangster car, a Tommy gun, you know, in the background, there's a tornado of snow geese. You know, they twist down and then, you know, it's so like elements. And then there's one of the more recent, Ribeye Ralph, you know, it's a sandhill crane. You know, people call sandhill cranes the ribeye of the
sky. Yep.
So we put a sandhill crane in the back of a Chinook helicopter up in the air, flying around, grilling a steak. Just like things like that, you know, the average person who doesn't duck hunt, who's never duck hunted, sees that and they're like, oh man, that's funny. That's a duck riding a lawnmower.
Right.
Or, oh, that's funny. That's two ducks riding down the street. But, you know, somebody who's, you know, maybe a newer waterfowl hunter, about, oh man, those are hooded mergansers. That's cool as hell. You know, like,
yeah.
Oh. And then you get like a diehard waterfowl hunter who like, he's like, man, that's funny because
of all those things that you integrated into it.
Hooded mergansers fighting for the same place on the same street, so to speak, as these wood ducks. And, you know, here's, you know, this chalk outline of this wood duck posted up right there. Man, there's something for everybody in this brand, and there's a space for everybody to exist. And the one thing that they all have in common is the lighthearted humility approach that we try to take on things. You know, I pride myself in the business to integrate some of those little things. And, you know, always kind of remembering, you know, some of the stuff you'll see. A lot of the stuff has like leg bands, like a lot of our birds will have leg bands, and there's 2019, you know, on the leg bands, the year we started, you know, like trying to like integrate these little, like, I guess, specifics into the design that means something. We had a really tragic accident happen the beginning of the year. We had a plane go down, crash, and there were children and a couple of adults that were killed on that plane. And it was a really, did you hear about it?
I don't recall.
It was a big deal in the, you know, especially here in this state, but in the waterfowl community kind of just branched out. And, you know, there are 4 children and a few adults that got killed. And, you know, when that plane went down, I decided to do a Carteret Strong shirt. It's a Carteret County, North Carolina is where this happened. And I called my designer and I was like, hey, listen, like, I live, you know, 3 miles from the Carteret County line. You know, you know, we got my people down there, you know?
Right.
So we did this design, and, you know, the approach that I took with it was 4 green-winged teal representing the children, you know, 2 drake pintails representing the 2 men, and a hen pintail representing the female. And they're all kind of like taking off, like taking flight. You know, and there's a shrimp boat in the background. There's oysters in the foreground. You know, the cloud was in the shape of Carteret County. The lighthouse on the side was Carteret County's lighthouse. And like tying all of these things in because they mean something.
Right.
and the more you look at a shirt of ours, the more little things that you'll see. And like, it makes it fun to me to be able to have that relationship with some of the customers, to be like, oh man, I seen what you did there, and it's just, I don't know, man, it's something different. It's one of the things that sets us apart. But it's one of the things that I'm most treasure about the brand.
No, that's one of the things or the thing that made me reach out to you and say, hey, why don't you jump on and let's chat hunting and about your company, because you look at your brand and it screams uniqueness. It screams fun. It screams attention to detail, but they're, like you said, you're covering all your bases with those. You pick up a shirt and it's like, on the surface, it's the one thing, but then there's so many other little details that you start digging in. You're like, wow, there's a lot of thought that went into this. This is super cool. But
absolutely,
I think it's neat. I think that, I appreciate what you're doing. It's really easy to get just too serious about life and step back, chill out, laugh, have fun with something that's supposed to be fun in the first place.
Right. We get to do this thing one time, man. That's it.
That's right. 100%.
We get our chance here and that's it. We're gone. We're done. It's over.
100%.
So I try to in every way that I can try to have fun, man.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate your time. We've been talking for almost 2 hours now.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I appreciate your time. I'm gonna close with a question that I ask. When I can remember it, I try to ask it. If you could only hunt one bird one way for the rest of your life, what's it going to be?
One species
of bird in one particular style or method.
One species in one way for the rest of my life. Man, I'm gonna be different. I'm gonna say gadwall in a dry field.
Why gadwalls?
They do it, bro. A gadwall to me.
That's a t-shirt right there.
The gadwall to me are for one, they're just a beautiful bird. A drake gadwall to me is one of the most beautiful birds there is. But they commit. Like if they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it. And I just doing it in a dry field is awesome to me. Widgeon are the same way, and it was tough to like go between a gadwall and a widgeon. A lot of people just, all these are gray ducks, you just gadwall, whatever. But like, right, there's the hidden beauty of that bird is when you really pick it up and you get it in the light and it shines. And the subtleties of a gadwall, they're beautiful to me. So I appreciate that. And, on the same note, I appreciate the widgeon for, they're all different. Mm-hmm. Like finding two drake widgeon that are exactly the same is very.
Oh, yeah, you can't do it. They're not like mallards that are like, that's straight mallard. They look the same.
So widgeon and gadwall, probably two of my favorite birds to hunt. Doing it in a dry field is the way I would do it all day. Just because we don't get to hunt dry fields here. Where I live. So, right. If I could only do that, I would do that 100%.
That's cool.
I got to ask you though, like what for you?
Probably, I mean, if I break it into just waterfowl, it's going to be mallards in a cornfield, in the snow. It's just, and it's exactly what you just said about gadwalls. They just do it, bro. I mean, when you get them hungry and it's cold and it's snowing, they just commit hard.
Yep.
And nothing's keeping them out of that field, and they just storm you. Whereas you get mallards on the water and they could be touchy, they can be
very picky.
Yeah. And in a field, when it's cold and it's snowing, hang on to your butts, because they're going to storm you, and I love that. I absolutely love that. If I were to broaden it out and say birds in general and not just waterfowl, I'd probably have to go with hunting rough grouse, and in where I grew up back in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's something about that bird, man, that just does it. Get pointing dog, a good pointing dog in the woods. It's awesome. It's
They're
awesome.
very good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, I know you're trying to cut this out. I know your listeners are probably going to be a little bored with a 2-hour episode.
No.
Keep them going.
You'd be amazed. Because you and I have covered a wide variety of topics and ideas, which is good. That's good. But we've focused on, who you are and your brand and what you do at the same time. And so if I got you this far in the podcast, you guys need to check out Combat Waterfowl. You can find them on social media. You've got a website. You guys are everywhere out there, and check out what they've got. Your designs are phenomenal. Like I said, if you like to have fun and duck hunt and all that stuff, this brand is one that you definitely got to buy a shirt. You definitely got or 10.
yeah, we're 10. Yeah. And we dipped our toes into fishing a little bit. We got into some fishing. We got into some turkey hunting. We got some whitetail stuff coming this fall.
Oh, cool.
Whitetail stuff is a little bit more on the serious side, but I definitely appreciate you having me, Todd, and this opportunity to be a part of this podcast and Eastman's Hunting Journal. It's huge, man. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And if you get a wild hair and you get out, you want to come out this way and shit ducks in January, let me know.
All right. All I need is an invite, brother.
Yeah, you got a spot in the blind anytime you want it, man.
I appreciate that.
Just give me a holler and we can make it happen.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it, brother.
Cool, man. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.